Welcome to the Virginia is for Laughers podcast, brought to you by X2 Comedy. If you're looking to get more out of your Shenandoah Valley experience, then this is the podcast for you. You'll meet interesting people, the comedians that perform here, and find out more about what you can do and see. Whether you live here or plan to visit, listen to explore what helps make up our unique slice of heaven. Now here's your host, Dawn Davis Womack.
Hello, Laughers. I'm pleased to introduce you to Kirsten Moore, owner of Magpie Diner and Bakery. From a beloved 1950s tire service station to a modern corner diner, Magpie is the place where neighbors gather for good food and warm hospitality. A full-service breakfast and lunch restaurant serving coffee brewed from beans roasted right next door at Chestnut Ridge Coffee Roasters. They honor the seasons and everything from their sandwiches to their cocktails. Their in-house bakery turns out delicious, fresh bread and pastries daily. They have indoor and outdoor dining options, and their patio is dog friendly. They are a true community corner, and all are welcome at their table. Also, if you want to drink free coffee and work all day, visit their second floor co-working space, the Perch at Magpie, available for use with a membership or a day pass. Check it out on your next visit. Kirsten is a community builder, connector, and entrepreneur who can effortlessly transition from vision to action, and we're delighted to speak with her today. Welcome to the show, Kirsten. It's great to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, this is so exciting. I'm very, very excited. I was talking to you about a little bit before the show about how we have a connection. Your mom, Helen Knopfsinger, what? She is so great. I love it. I did some community theater work with her, and I've done some film work locally, and she's an absolute delight. And I'm just happy to meet her daughter for the first time. This is so cool. Thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. She's pretty great.
She is pretty great. I have a feeling she might have a little bit to do with your story. So we're going to get into that. And I'm going to ask you, I want to start with this because I read your core values, and one of those core values really stuck out to me. So I wanted to start here. And that reads, this value, quote, gathering around food is one of the most basic and necessary points of human connection. Our passion for food drives us to create a warm and welcoming place for that connection to happen. We understand the way we make people feel is more powerful than anything we can put on a plate. So what is the story behind this passion, and how did it develop?
So when we first started, and when I say we, I'm talking about my management team, which is all women run, which I love. We started writing some core values that really embodied what we were trying to do. And we really wanted to, this was even before we knew COVID was in the, in the mix, but we really wanted to kind of rewrite the playbook on how restaurants are done. This is my first restaurant. I never even waited tables in a restaurant. But I was a food writer for several years. And so I did pay attention really closely to the dynamics in restaurants, the food, sort of the details that make one good or make one not so great. And one of the things that I've learned just through my experience, like hosting parties, and I did do some catering work, my own experience with food and memories, is that so much of it is connected to how we feel about where we are. So a lot of us travel and we eat somewhere and we have this food memory that sort of lives with us forever. Or we experience something that's a really important time in our life. And you remember a meal that you had during that. And it's just so much is connected to our emotions and our feelings. And what we really wanted was to create a place where people felt comfortable. Everybody felt comfortable coming and welcome, and that we would feed them good food. And it was less about like, I'm coming to get my favorite chicken salad sandwich that will always be on the menu forever and ever and ever, but more about, I want to go there because I feel seen and heard and welcome, and their food is excellent, and whatever they put in front of me, I will eat. And so it was a little bit about that. It doesn't diminish the food piece at all, because that's super important to us. But just like our first point of connection with people is just to make them feel welcome and comfortable, and again, to trust us to feed them good food.
So more of an experience.
Yes.
Around the plate of amazing food.
Yes. Yes.
You guys have really great, amazing food. Before there was a Magpie Diner, there was a very popular and fun Sub Rosa Supper Club that you hosted and planned with your business partner. Can you tell us how you all came up with that idea, what it is, and is it still around?
Yeah, so this is actually completely separate from Magpie, different business partner. It's a funny little story. I had a catering company that I had started by accident.
My gosh. Okay. Got a question, but keep going.
So I had 10, 12 years ago, had gotten divorced, just needed to do what I knew how to do best. I was working part-time for an architecture firm. And I started a company called Taste that was supposed to be sort of incorporate all my food interests, which would have been doing graphic design work for a food related business, teaching cooking classes because people kept calling me and asking who teaches cooking classes, and they wanted to get like last minute presents for their wives. I'm like, nobody does. And somebody said, you should do it. And then food writing. I wanted to get back into that. I had done that for 3 years. And then only if I had to, I wanted to cater. And I never taught a cooking class. I never did a design project for a food business. And I did get another food writing job, part-time job, which was great. But also someone recommended me to a young couple who was getting married, and they had a pretty low budget. Their church ladies were going to cook the meal, and the wedding kept getting bigger. And like a couple months before the wedding, like pretty close to the wedding, they said, this feels like more than we can handle. So I agreed to, one of my friends recommended me and said, she's just getting into this, you should call her. So I agreed to do their wedding, and I talked to them through this, sort of their planned menu. And the bride was vegetarian, but they were having like a carving station. I thought, this is so dumb that you're having like meat as the center point of this important day, and it's not important to your life. So we created this beautiful midsummer menu with like full of vegetables and fresh corn and beautiful tomatoes, and meat was a side thing. And it was the first wedding that I had done, and people came into the kitchen and like hugged me and they were like stealing leftovers. And it just made me realize that like people really needed this to be important and personal to them. And so this catering company took off. So like I said, this is not where I wanted my life to go, but it took off. And it was caterings, evenings, weekends, holidays, whenever you don't want to be working. And so after about 6 years doing this on the side of my actual job, I felt a little burnt out, and I sold it to one of my employees. And I had this idea to do, to kind of get back to the idea of throwing a dinner party. And I was tired of being on brides' timelines, and, they're like, we need this here, and I want to eat this, and this is how it's going to go. And so Sub Rosa was the antithesis of that. And it was, I pick a date, I cook what I want to cook, you show up, you eat it, and you'll be happy. So it was like completely the opposite. It was like, you come to me and we'll do this. So I guess it was in a way a little bit restaurant-y experience. But my partner in that, Jen Sodakoff, was a member at the Hub, which we'll talk about later. But she had just moved here from California and gotten married, and was kind of trying to find a way to connect. And she came into the Hub one day with a whole bunch of bags of like party supplies or something. I said, what are you doing? And she said, oh, I don't know. There's just a sale on stuff. And I love to like style dinner tables, but I don't want to do weddings or anything like that. And I said, oh girl, we needed to talk. so we went to lunch, and I proposed this idea to her that this is, just a dinner party, like a stylized dinner party. And she said, well, how do we start? I don't know anybody around here very well. And I'm like, we just put it out there. And so we just randomly said, we're starting this thing. And we had 250 people sign up on this sort of mailing list in the first 24 hours. We're like, okay, this is gonna be good. And some of that came from like, I had a reputation as a caterer and also as a food writer. And so people trusted me with food. And again, it was something like unique and different to do. So then once we realized that was going to be a go. We just picked a date, and I think it was a date in October, and put it out there with a ticket. And people bought tickets not knowing where they were going, what they were eating, anything about it except a date. And then the day before, you would get a date to the secret location. And we styled these crazy dinners. They were like 7-course dinners with wine and cocktails, and 30 people, 24 to 30 people. And you could only buy 2 tickets. So you couldn't get a whole bunch of people together and go out. Like, it was about meeting new people, ending up in new places that you didn't know existed, all of that. So the idea of it was to like experience something new, including the food. So we would do these themed dinners. Each one was styled differently. It was in a different location. We had them professionally photographed. So if you go to subrosasupperclub.com, you can see all the pictures from all these events, and they're fantastic. She was having her first child right about the time that I was opening Magpie. So we put it on pause, which turned out to be ideal because COVID also hit. It's still on pause, but we are in constant communication about, we need to bring this back because we're both itching to do it again. It was so fantastic. And they were so much fun. So.
Well, yeah. I'm so glad to hear it, because I'm going to put my vote in for bring it back, because I missed it the first round.
Yeah. There were a lot of people who said, I just signed up right before you stopped doing them. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'm curious too. This is probably some wonderful food reference that I should maybe know, but why Sub Rosa? Why is it called Sub Rosa? Is that how food ignorant I am? I mean,
no, it has nothing to do with food. Well, it's kind of with food. So, in ancient Roman dining rooms, roses were carved into the ceilings, or put in the mosaics of dining rooms, banquet rooms. And it was often where like conversations and treaties and, that kind of stuff was happening. And the idea of it being sub rosa meant under the rose. And that was sort of like top secret. So this was sort of like a confidential conversation under the rose. And so it was sort of that hinted at that like secretness of it and exclusivity of it. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah. I'm glad I asked that question. Yeah. That was such a cool answer. That is fantastic. And only 30 to 40 people. But
25 to 30. We actually,
But you had 250 people that signed up on your newsletter. So how do people get those coveted 25, 30 seats?
Well, so we had 250 sign up the first day. We have over 2,000 people on the list now.
Okay, even better question. How do you get? Because I want to be on that next round. I got to get some tips here, Kirsten.
We would email the list and say, like, we're going to have a ticket release date. Watch for it. And tickets sold out in like 10 to 15 minutes. So they were definitely coveted. We had gotten a really nice article about us in Virginia Living magazine. That was really cool. It was a nice feature, but we had people come from all over, and it was just fun to watch people interact and meet people, and also explore really unique places in the Valley that people didn't know existed. So that was fun.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look at some of those places too. They could be great podcast guests, I think. I was looking at some of those places. I've never heard of it.
Right.
Those are fabulous pictures, by the way. I did go to that website. They are amazing.
I think that was some of it too. Like having those pictures then posted the next day, these beautiful, like professional photos of this experience really made people like, oh, I want to be part of that. And that's intentional. I mean, some of my marketing background too is like, how do you make people want to be involved with what you're doing? And those pictures certainly help. So. And it was also nice because it the guests were like, put your cameras away because we've got pictures. We've got the picture thing down. So just put your phones away and interact. So
I really like that. Yeah, very talented Jen at the tablescaping.
It's beautiful. She does beautiful work.
Yeah, she really does. You seem to have a real knack at this cooking thing. So how far back does this go? I sense there's some childhood experience, perhaps.
Yeah.
Can you share?
Is. Yeah. So my dad's a musician, and my mom would often throw parties after concerts and things like that. And so she was always entertaining. So I learned that skill from her, I guess. And the one thing that she always did was overshoot how much people were going to eat. And I just remember as a kid, like she'd throw a party and we'd end up eating leftovers for like, it seemed like a month. we were all sick of it. She still does that, but she packs us all up with leftovers and sends us home. But I did learn a lot from her about entertaining and generous hospitality. And so that's a super important thing. From my dad, I really learned the connection between food and memories. He and I can often talk about, a place we were in Germany and, when I was 5 and the little bakery with like a ladybug cake that I remember, we just share that knack for like attaching food and memories together. And so it's just sort of something I grew up with. And I kind of self-taught and learned to do things on my own. And then threw a lot of parties myself as an adult. And it got to the place where we were having these giant epic Labor Day parties and people would say, oh, you should cater, you should open a restaurant, none of which appealed to me and all of which I'm doing now. So, destiny, right?
Yeah.
So it just kind of grew. And it was always just a passion of mine. I love flavors and interesting combinations and just, people would always laugh because when I would throw a party, I'd never make anything that I'd ever made before. And my husband now is always like, did you taste it first? Like when I was catering, he's like, did you taste it? I'm like, no, it's good. I'm sure it's good. So my knack, like my superpower is looking at a recipe and knowing that it's going to be good or knowing what needs to be tweaked. Like I can look at the same recipe for like, if there's a dish and I can look at 6 different recipes, I know which one's the right one. And then beyond that, honestly, cooking is just following directions. my chef, Rachel Fitzgerald's awesome. And she can like take a flavor combination and create something. I was never a like, let's make up a recipe kind of person. I was like, I know what I want to, like, I know what flavors I want. And I'm going to go find that recipe that works for that. And I can tweak a little bit, but I'm not a make it up person. So.
But Rachel that's fascinating.
She's fantastic.
Okay. Where did you find Miss Rachel? How did you find Miss Rachel?
So this is also a funny story.
All right.
This is like, I did none of this restaurant by the book. So she was a teacher. She spent like equal parts of her life teaching and also cooking in restaurants. She was a roommate of somebody that I know, and we were having a women's dinner party, and everyone brought something at their house, and I brought a salad, and she was in the kitchen cooking chicken, and she was just so happy, like she was just happy standing there cooking kitchen, and it was hot. It was so hot that day. I remember it, and we ended up putting the chicken on my salad, and it was like not a combination that you would think would be good. And it was fantastic. I'm like, this is the best combination. I can still taste it. Again, that food memory, I can still like taste that in my mouth right now. And somebody told me when they heard I was thinking about opening a restaurant, they're like, you need Rachel in the kitchen. She needs to be in the kitchen. And so I'm like, I'm down with this because she thinks about food the same way that I do and in terms of flavor and presentation and all of that. And so we met for drinks at the Chop House, and then I walked her through the Big L Tire building, which was still the Big L Tire building at that point, and it was not anywhere near, we hadn't even started renovating, and I kind of talked her through my vision, and she looked at me like I had 2 heads. And I said, how would you like to be my executive chef? And she needed to think about it. And then the next day she said, I never make decisions this quickly, but this feels exactly right. And it turns out it was about the same time that she had to decide, like within a week, she had to decide whether she was renewing her teaching contract or not. So the timing was perfect. And so she came on, and she has certainly just changed the face of food in this town. And we just get so many compliments on everything, and it's creative and interesting and beautiful. And her flavors are amazing. And I just like every day I'm happy to come to work and eat her food. So yeah, it's incredible. And it's nice to have somebody who sees food the same way that I do, so that it's like it feels like my food too. Like people are always surprised when I say I'm not in the kitchen at all, because they feel like they say your food's so good, and it's actually Rachel's food. But we have the same aesthetic when it comes to food and the same flavor concepts. And so we can talk about something in the hallway for 5 minutes and she makes it happen, and it's great. So it's a really nice combination. We work great together.
They do. Okay. I was going to ask the way you see food the same way, and then you talked it out. And I get what you're saying now. That's really awesome. You're walking her through this pre-renovated Big L tire station.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. It was the beloved 1950s tire station. What inspired you to open up Magpie there in the north end of Harrisonburg? How did this come about?
Yeah. So there was no plan for this. This is not like a long-term dream of mine. In fact, it was never a dream of mine to own a restaurant. Some developers bought the property when Big L moved out, and they bought this building that Magpie's in, the building across the street, the building that Sagebird Cider Works is in, and then the empty lot that is our parking lot, and also where the new townhouses were constructed. They were interested in the co-working space that we had called the Hub, and thought it was a cool concept. And they kept buying buildings, which were in strip malls and boring and all that stuff. And so they said, "Oh, you should look at this." We bought it. And then when they were buying this, they said, "I think we have something that you might like. When the deal's closing, we'll show it to you." And so as soon as they sent me the address to come meet them, I was like, "Oh yeah, this building is iconic. I grew up in this town, and this like triangle flat iron building shape has always been intriguing to me. It's a super cool building." And so I went down to look at it, and they were thinking of it as a co-working space, and it's a pretty huge building. And I walked in that front lobby, and just with I just had this instant vision of a diner, and it had that sort of that hopper, diner painting, look to it just in my mind. It didn't look like it then, but I as a designer and a very visual person, I had this instant flash of like what this could look like. And people always laugh at me because I'm actually doing the building across the street right now too. And it's a bit of a disaster. And I walk them through them and talk about my vision, and they're like, whatever. So I have this weird, uncanny ability to see potential in things. And so, so when I walked in, I'm like, this has to be a diner. And it just felt like the right corner. It felt like a end of town that needed some attention. It felt like a great place to connect. And like, basically in all directions, there's residential neighborhoods. So like, this needs to be this place. And so I said, give me like a week and I'm going to propose something a little bit different than what you had in mind. And we'll see where we go. And that was it. They loved it, and we moved forward. So
yeah, you move forward, and now I love it. You just celebrated your second birthday this past July. Congratulations on being so wildly, successful. You are welcome. It really is truly inspirational, given that you opened in July 2020. This is a challenging time to open any business, yet over 300 people came out for the grand opening, forming a line around the block. Now, I don't know if you saw it coming, so I imagine it presented its challenges. So what were some of your biggest challenges opening during the pandemic, and were you surprised by the turnout?
Yeah, so did not see it coming. In fact, I spent most of this early spring kind of yelling at the construction crews to hurry up, because we were going to miss all of the spring events that make a restaurant viable, like graduations and things like that. And I'm like, we need to be open. Like if we miss this and just open in the summer, it's going to be an issue. And we had started the renovation back in September 2019. So that was when we had done it was a historic tax credit renovation. So we had started this process even like a year before that, but the actual construction started in September of 2019. So when COVID hit, I had all my managers hired. We were originally hoping for a March 1st open date, but that like wasn't anywhere near that. And so everything just kind of naturally slowed to a crawl, just because of workforce and being careful, and then the supply chain issues and things like that. So it naturally slowed down, which turned out to be really beneficial for us. And when we did open in July, people were ready to come out a little bit. There were some restrictions on how close we could have seating, but our seating was pretty flexible and we didn't actually lose that many seats. We just rearranged them differently. And we also benefited from having this really big patio, this brand new space. It's light and airy, and the garage doors that can go up. So we could really make people feel comfortable when they did come out. And so that was a really beneficial thing that we had that a lot of other places in town didn't have going for them. So we were super grateful for that. And the cool thing was none of those things veered from the original plan. Like, we didn't change how we renovated the building from that point on. We just continued doing what we were doing, and we didn't take tables out. We just arranged them differently. I didn't want it to feel like an empty restaurant. I still wanted it to feel intimate and welcoming. And so we just really paid attention to how that felt to people. And we were lucky to have the space to do that. But while we were waiting for that, for the project to be finished and to open, we did a little pivot because we just had time on our hands, and we realized that, hey, we were entering into a field that is going to be super impacted by this pandemic, both the farmers and the food suppliers and everything in the food system, not just the restaurants. And so we opened a little, like within a week, we had a conversation about it. And then the next week it was up and running. We pivoted to something called Magpie and Friends Local Foods Market. And it was a drive-through market. And we had twice a week pickups where we had over 100 people pick up each time. And we were offering fresh fruits and vegetables, local milks, cheeses, meats, breads. The bakers started baking in a high school that was closed in their kitchen. So they got to try out some of their baked stuff first. We offered restaurant food from restaurants that were closed that were still making like to order things that people could order ahead of time. So it's just a way to like stay involved and kind of support the food system that we were about to jump into that was going to suffer greatly through this. So that was kind of cool too. But yeah, we didn't do it to make money. We just did it to keep our hands busy, and it was a really beautiful thing. So when we did open, we kind of had this following, and we had this presence, and we had this ethos that people identified with. And that was really important. So them coming out to support us and eat with us was pretty cool.
I would say, now, is this market still ongoing now, or is that phased out?
No, we stopped it probably mid-June, right before we opened, so we could focus on getting the restaurant open. But it was booming, and there were a couple of people that tried to replicate it post kind of lockdown, and it didn't work because people were moving about freely, and it wasn't as important. So I think it was just the right thing at the right time. And we had all stocked up with like, I don't know, our freezer and our pantry were like full of cans and frozen stuff. And I'm like, I just want like salad. And no one was going to the grocery store. So it was like the ideal time to like be able to get like those fresh things that we were all missing because we weren't going to the grocery stores and the farmers market was shut down. And but it was just a really neat thing. We even had fresh flowers that people bought like crazy because it's just nice to have like a bright spot at that time. So yeah, it was fun to make that market happen. So
yeah, nice creative pivot in that time period. That's really great. Speaking of creativity, that's one of the many things that I love about Magpie is you get creative too on how you partner with other local food establishments to incorporate their items on your menu. For example, I see you offer Mount Crawford Creamery products, and I saw a recent Facebook post about your signature waffle topped with blueberry compote, sweet corn whip, brown butter cornbread crumble, and Harrisonburg's Shirley's Gourmet Caramel Popcorn. That sounds delightful, by the way. And those are just a couple of examples. I'm wondering, do you reach out to these food establishments with your ideas to collaborate or vice versa? How do these food dish ideas all come about?
So we definitely create our own food ideas. And if there's a place to incorporate other people, we tend to like reach out locally first. The popcorn thing was really cool. That waffle, like we changed the couple things on the brunch menu every week. So that waffle was just here for one weekend. It was so fantastic. I hope we bring it back.
Me too.
But it was fun. And the cool thing was we asked if it was all right if we used some Shirley's popcorn on the waffle, and they were thrilled, of course. And I wanted to like thank them some way. And before I could get around to thanking them, Lisa Rushley, who's one of the owners, shows up with a box of little bags of popcorn for all of my 48 employees to thank us for putting their thing on a waffle, their popcorn on a waffle. And so that was really cool. Like they were just grateful to be associated with us and to be spotlighted. So that was really cool. We always have Mount Crawford Creamery milk. We always use Klein's ice cream. We get a lot of our summer produce locally. So we try to do that as much as we can. And again, supporting the local food system is really important. And we try to do that whenever possible, and shout out to other people as well. So it's fun.
Yes, I can imagine you and Rachel are in the hallways just in cahoots about these ideas.
It's mostly her. Yeah.
Well, she's doing great. Great job, Rachel. Keep it up. That's what I say. Yeah, you've got, again, many talents. In 2014, you mentioned you've written for food. You've done some food writing and that kind of thing. You've also authored a book. It's entitled Rocktown Food, Stories from Virginia's First Culinary District. And it's about Harrisonburg becoming the first and only Virginia culinary district. What were some of the most interesting stories you came across?
So I think that was a really cool project. It was a HDR, Harrisonburg Downtown Renaissance project. We went to every restaurant that was in the downtown district and had either a conversation with them or wrote a full story about them or did a photo shoot with them, highlighting them in some way. So at that time, everybody was represented in that book. I think 2 days after it came out, where the Golden Pony is, it used to be the Blue Nile, and they closed. So it's like instantly out of date, and it's really out of date now. But it's a cool record of what it was at the time and some of the leaders and at the forefront of that. So we sort of toggled between, telling the stories about the chef or telling the story about like the restaurant itself or the building itself. And there's just so many. I think that's one of the things that we forget about when we eat in restaurants is that there's something behind this. It's not just what's on your plate right then. And again, that sort of goes back to one of our core values is like, this is for us, this is a tire store that everybody came to, and we get people coming in all the time that say, "Oh, I used to bring my tires here." There's a couple of people that remember the Coke machine that was outside because they had the coldest ice cold Cokes or something. I don't know.
That's awesome.
We got a couple of requests to bring back the Coke machine.
I like that idea.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So I think just digging into those stories, like it's just fun to hear, like. The chefs in the kitchen don't ever get to see the light of day, and let's tell those stories. There's just a lot of cool people doing a lot of cool things in this town. Like Steve from Cuban Burger, I think is a really interesting story. I think Wilton House being one of the original farm to table restaurants in Virginia, not just here, but in Virginia is a really interesting story. It's just, I just think people forget to ask about those things that they aren't shoving in their face. So yeah.
What stood out to you about Stephen, you said, right? From Cuban Burger? What stood out about his story?
Just sort of the authenticity of it. I think we also asked some of the chefs to include a recipe, and he included one of his mother's recipes. Oh, cool. And it's just, it's kind of a cool, like, how did you end up here? What is, why Cuban style hamburgers? It's just the authenticity of it. I think is a really neat thing.
Yeah, that is really neat. Well, what would you say now? So that was 2014. Now we're in 2022. So since then, what has surprised you the most about where our culinary district is in downtown Harrisonburg right now?
That's a loaded question.
I thought so. And I had to ask this foodie because you're going to have a better answer than me.
So one of the things that like I, as a food writer and a food consumer, keep hoping for is that somebody will step up and do something really different and raise the bar. And I tried to do that here, and I hope that I did, and I feel like we have. That, you know, that a diner doesn't have to be just bacon and eggs, but it can be this really creative place for interesting breakfast and lunch food and new flavors and all of that. And so I feel like we've raised the bar in that sense. Every time a restaurant opens or I see a menu that's too big or just kind of ticks all the boxes to make everyone happy. I wish people would be more risk taking and say, this is what I'm going to serve, and people will come and they'll like it or they won't like it. And that's okay. But like trying to always please everybody all the time drives me crazy. I think Boboco is fantastic at doing things like that. Like they just make what they make and people love it. And it's one of the best restaurants in town. Taj of India is the same way. Like they don't try to like throw in things that make American palates happy. They just make really great Indian food. And I wish more people would do that. And also people look at things that are already here and say, oh, you know, Jeff Brown's makes an amazing hamburger and people love hamburgers and they're doing so well. So I'm going to open another hamburger place. And I'm like, fill in the niche. And, you know, Magpie is successful in part because we don't have any great breakfast places. Like, and who doesn't love breakfast? Like all day long, everybody loves breakfast. And it was, as a food writer, that was one of the things that I saw was a missing niche. And so it was kind of a no-brainer to me. Like there's a million places you can go for dinner, but where do you go for breakfast or brunch? And, or even a really like I in my jobs have always had lunch meetings, and you go to a lunch meeting and you're full and tired and exhausted and you just want to take a nap afterwards. And I wanted something that just felt good and healthy and light and fresh. And so we're doing that too. And I just wish people would find their uniqueness and do that and be brave and do it and stop copying everybody else. So that's where I think we stand right now.
Excellent. I'm loving that. You know, you're a leader and a voice in the culinary district. So I'm so glad to hear you share that. It just piqued my interest. I'm like, you know what? They do make really cool food at Magpie, and she's a foodie. I'm a foodie. I'm wondering though, what Kirsten's favorite dishes are at Magpie.
It's funny. It changes all the time. This week we have on special something called strapazzata, which is a Greek soft scramble. So you scramble eggs with tomatoes, like fresh tomato puree almost. Scramble those, put it on sourdough toast. It's got fresh cherry tomatoes, some feta cheese, dill, chives, lemon zest on it. It is fantastic. And I have had it 2 days in a row, and I will probably have it all the rest of this week. But then it'll be gone next week and I won't get to have it again. So I'm literally eating it every chance I get. I get on a Turkish egg kick. Sometimes I just love 2 eggs over medium with toast and bacon. Yeah, it just depends. The specials are so good. We have a salad right now that's a peach and tomato panzanella with burrata cheese, and it's freaking fantastic. So I was eating that every day last week. So, you know, it goes. I'm so proud of everything we make. And my husband and I go out to eat and we spend an arm and a leg and are always disappointed, either like how much we spent for not great food or that we don't feel very good after we eat it. And so I'm just always really proud of what we're doing here and the food that we put out, the flavors that we put out, and the way that the community has embraced it. It's pretty cool.
It is high quality. And I am curious. I mean, I'm not a chef. You know, I go eat your all's food because You all are much better than I am. But I do notice, and you've talked about it a little bit during this interview too, that it'll be gone next week, or, things will change up. Why do they change up so frequently? Is that normal in this industry?
No, it's not.
Okay.
And it adds more work and it's complicated. But if you remember when I was talking about throwing parties, I never made anything that I have made before. So like you'd never come to my house for a dinner party and have the same thing twice. It's a little bit just the way my brain works. I get bored with things really easily. I think my kitchen is really creative and they also like the variety in things. I think it's got to be miserable to work in a restaurant where you've had the same menu for 10 years and you're doing the same exact thing. Like even if you just change one or two things, but like the special this week was actually suggested by two of our servers. So everyone's kind of like into the food and the ideas here, which is fun that people can contribute ideas. But we change it mostly because like part of what I did when I was catering is like and with Sub Rosa, like people learn to trust me and my food. And again, I say me and my food, and when it's also like mostly Rachel's, but again, we share the food brain. I wanted to teach people to eat healthier and cleaner, with more right-sized portions. I wanted them to try new things, and I wanted them to do it in a place that's comfortable. So if you come to a diner that's welcoming and friendly, and you know that if you don't see something that piques your interest, you can always get pancakes, you're very much more likely to say, oh, you know what? That looks really good. I'm going to try it today. And if I don't like it, I'll just order pancakes. And people have learned to trust us. And so people come in because they see something on Instagram or because they look at the menu and they're like, oh my gosh, we have one regular who looks at the menus and she'll ping me if I don't post them at my usual time. And she's like, I'm trying to decide whether I come in on Wednesday or wait till Saturday. Cause she would like, it's just, I mean, people come in multiple times a week because they want to try things. They come in because they know they can only get it for a certain amount of time. So it's a little bit of that. Like if I don't go, I'm going to miss out. And also that looks so good, I can't miss out. So there's some, we're not trying to like trick people into coming here, but there is that idea that like, come, and this is like, you'll get something new every time. And it's just always a pleasure to sit down, and look at the menu and try something new. So, that's kind of the idea behind it, but also we get bored cooking the same things. So
I got a couple of questions swirling in my mind as you're sharing that. One, before I forget it. So are there any items that are a staple, no matter what season you're going to find them at Magpie? Can you share?
Yes.
Is that possible?
Yes.
Okay. What are they?
There's a lot of things that are stable. And one thing that has become like, it's actually our top seller every day. In fact, if something bumps it out of the top spot, we are like, whoa. But our chorizo bowl is super popular. It's potato bowl with chorizo and avocado crema and an egg and all kinds of good stuff on it. And people love that. It's super hearty and filling. And there are people that come in and say, oh, I always want to get something else, but I can't not get this. So that's become really popular. One of our first specials that we did when we opened was Turkish eggs, which is a really unique dish. It's whipped feta and yogurt. So it's a cold base and then has a spicy chili sauce, a cucumber, walnut, and dill salad, and then a hot fried egg on it. So it's this weird mix of like cold and hot temperatures and cool and hot flavors. And it's so delicious, and you scoop it up with your sourdough bread and it's fantastic. And it was one of those things where I'm like, this is a super weird special and we're going to put it on and see how brave this community is going to be with us. And then we'll know what our like parameters are as far as like how crazy can we get with specials. And people loved it. And we ended up adding it to the permanent menu. And then we took it off for a season just because we were kind of just thought we'd mix it up, and people rioted about it. So now it's back on. So it's fun. It's fun to know that people will try anything really. And again, if that's not their bag, bacon and eggs and pancakes all day long. So Yeah.
How did they riot? There wasn't pickets actually, were there outside?
People would come and you would just be like, they'd be like, oh, but that's what I came for. So, yeah.
And you're like, we heard you and it is back. That's really great.
Yeah.
You make these food items too. You mentioned a strength is offering food at different seasons. And that I wonder if you could share with us a little bit about your thought process behind that and how far in advance you plan these menus.
So I'll answer the far in advance one, not far in advance.
Okay.
Like on Sunday afternoon, we're like, how about this for the special this week, which starts Tuesday? And we joke, we call Tuesday mornings Test Kitchen Tuesday because we often have a special on that we haven't completely like figured out. And so it's always like, how do we plate this? What does it look like? And so we joke that it's Test Kitchen Tuesday. But they're always fantastic. And again, it's flavor based and Rachel and I both understand how that works. And she especially knows how to execute that. So they're very last minute. Like people will often like say, oh, we're bringing family to town like a month from now. Do you know what the menu is going to be like? No idea. And that's kind of fun too, because it's just sort of a last minute, like, just, it's kind of whatever we're feeling. If there's something we need to use up, or if there's something that's just super ripe right now. We had a farmer message us about having a plethora of ground cherries. And so the bakery was making some like ground cherry crumble bars yesterday that were really great. So, it's just kind of fun to just it gives us some freedom to be sporadic. So, but what was the first part of that question?
The seasons, the seasonal foods.
Yeah. I think our bodies naturally want different things at different times. When it's hot and miserable, like it was this summer, we want that lighter, fresher flavors. The minute it starts getting cold and rainy and fall, like we start craving different things. And for us, it's just a natural response. And again, teaching people to listen to their bodies and eat more healthy and more cleanly. Like, how do you find those things that don't just like fill you up more because it's fall and you got your big, sweatpants and sweaters on, but actually like fulfill what you're craving, not necessarily make you more full, if that makes sense. So we like to find those seasonal kinds of flavors, and it's fun as we get to the end of a season with a menu, and we change it like once or twice a season, even within that, that we start tweaking things. Like right now we have a peach and blueberry French toast, and it's fantastic. And it's a big seller as well. But, peaches are kind of, starting to wind down soon. And so you start thinking about what comes next and what that looks like. And so it's always fun for us to just think about the seasons and be present in those seasons too.
Yeah, that's in the diner. And then I imagine also in the bakery, you're kind of swapping out those seasonal foods. So we're kind of moving in a little bit of a pumpkin season here soon. So you will never find pumpkin spice anything here. So don't even go there. Oh, snap. Okay. Do tell. What do you have against the pumpkin spice?
It's just like the epitome of basic, right?
And we can't do basic
We don't do basic.
So there's different autumn flavors, I take it. Okay. So what kinds of things might we expect in the fall, perhaps?
We love pears. We love like nuts and oats. All of those. Well, yeah.
Not pumpkin spice,
not
though.
Pumpkin.
Laughers.
No.
Forget about it.
Sorry.
That's great. I know too, we talked about this earlier in the intro, and part of your story is that hub co-working space that used to be on Brew Street, excuse me. And now it's above the Magpie Diner on the second floor. That's your new location. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of just got a new face, new name, new location. Spirit of it is the same, which it's a membership-based workspace for entrepreneurs, small businesses, and remote workers. I would love to ask you, what is the inspiration behind creating this, and how does it all work? So those laughers out there that might be able to utilize this space, it'd be great for them to know a little bit more about it.
Yeah. So the hub came about. I was working, doing some business development for Blue Ridge Architects, which is now Blue Line. And they were expanding and sort of needed more space next door to them. And that's where the hub was. And kind of looking at as a way to expand to other markets where they could have a bigger footprint, but then also by having a bigger space, but then also monetizing the rest of the space. We started down that path, and then the principal of that firm just felt like he really needed to refocus on the architecture side of things and not get distracted by this. And so I basically took that over and ran with it. And it's a great way to have a home, like an office away from home. I think everyone knows that works at home how distracted you can get at home by laundry or cats or kids or whatever it is. Mowing the yard.
Yeah.
And so it was great. And when we were like pre-pandemic, it was a very transient kind of membership. So people would move to town and be working remotely for somebody or working for themselves and have a spot there. And then they would sort of get connected in the community and start working for somebody here. And so then they would leave and go work for them. But post-pandemic, everyone works remotely. And so it's funny, we have just this really consistent membership because people are just working this way now. So like this is their office. And we have a long wait list for the private offices and the dedicated desks because no one's going anywhere. So we didn't have it before. So it's much easier post-pandemic than it was pre-pandemic to have this kind of business. But it's basically like a gym membership. You purchase a membership, and we have three different levels. So that right now, all we have available is the general membership, which means you come in with your laptop, you work in any open desk space or lounge area or wherever you feel like working for the day. And you take your stuff home at the end of the night, but it's 24/7 access. So all of our members can come at any time. So if someone has a side hustle and they work till 5 and then come in at 9:00 at night and work till midnight on something else, it's great. It's a really cool space. It's got a conference room. So if you work remotely and even like to work at home sometimes, but don't want to meet with your clients there, you can use the conference room here. And there's a couple of phone rooms, so you can have private spaces as well. There are private offices and dedicated desks that you can leave your stuff at, and it's always yours. But those, like I said, have a wait list. But it's a really neat thing, and what it does is it gives you the ability to have coworkers without having to talk about work. so you don't have to like work with these people, but you have people around to communicate with and socialize. And, there's lots of conversations that happen around the coffee area in the kitchen. There's a big crew of people here who mountain bike and do some outdoor activities. The Shenandoah Valley Bike Coalition is a member here. And so there's a lot of discussions about sort of outdoor recreation. And so they're all talking about their rides and things in the morning. It's just a really cool way for people to have a connection. And especially for people who work remotely that aren't getting that in the office, or not getting that human interaction. And they wouldn't get that at home either. This is a great place for that to happen. And it's a really cool space.
It is. And they can get your delicious food right downstairs for breakfast or lunch.
Yeah. Members all have a house account, so you can actually just charge it up and we'll bill you at the end of the month. And there's free coffee all day. So yeah, that's about worth. You can drink your membership amount worth of coffee if you want.
So many perks, people.
So many perks.
So many perks. Yeah. Earlier this year, you're just doing a fabulous job. Earlier this year, the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development awarded Magpie Diner for the Best Adaptive Reuse Project Award. What excited you most about winning this?
Yeah. So as a design person, like that's sort of my background was graphic design, and also having worked for an architecture firm, and just being around sort of that, the idea of commercial renovation and stuff, but not actually doing it. This was my first commercial renovation project. And it was a historic tax credit project, which means there's a ton of red tape and a ton of like documentation and all that stuff. It felt really good because I was not only because of that background that I have, but also because my only inspiration for doing this was the actual building itself. Like I wouldn't have searched high and low for a place to open a diner if this building hadn't been there. So the building being the inspiration for all of this and the impact that it's had on the community is really cool that it's been recognized as also a really good project. So, so that's cool. I like that the building inspired it. The building's being awarded for that, but it overall, the impact on the community is such a cool thing. So.
Yeah. And you mentioned this earlier. I don't know what you can share, but I'm going to ask. So you said you're working on the project or the building next door?
Yeah.
Across the street. Can you say anything about that yet?
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
So that building had been for lease for a while. The developers were originally going to put apartments in it, but then sort of started to disband a little bit and just didn't want to quite put the effort into it that maintaining apartments takes. And so they had put it up for lease, and they had a couple of people looking at it, and I just kept watching the interest in it. And what I was concerned about is that we'd end up with something over there that would really impact the vibe that Magpie has. And I'm like, let's not screw up this corner. And so I proposed to them that they just give me the whole building and I will handle all of it. And they've got one lease with me, and I'll do whatever I want, and it'll be good. Because our relationship with the Magpie project was so good. They're like, yeah, sure, do it. Take it off our hands. So it's going to be called the Liberty Street Mercantile. And we are renovating it right now. They've been soda blasting it's all post and beam inside this beautiful building. It doesn't have any walls in it. It's a huge building with no walls. And the first floor will have shops. We're going to have a flower shop, independent bookstore, which people are super excited about. Likely a home goods, home decor kind of store, and likely some sort of herbal apothecary type store. And then in the little carriage house on the side, there will be a wine bar, which is great. And then upstairs will be event space, and it can hold about 200 people. So we can do weddings and music and small theater, or like author talks, whatever you want to do up there. It'll have a full
comedy shows,
right? Comedy, stand-up comedy.
I don't know. Just put that out there.
I'm down. It has a full catering kitchen. So one of the things we can't do at Magpie is, we get asked about all the time, but it's hosting private events, and we work so hard during the day. People like working here because of the daytime hours. And so we've just kind of avoided those like the plague. But once the space across the street is open, we will hire an event manager who can handle both the staff up and handle the space over there as well as at Magpie. So that'll be a nice option too. But it's, again, sort of that niche thing. Like, we don't have any event space downtown. There's some cool retail stuff that will happen there when we have wait for tables at Magpie, which we usually do especially on weekends. Even if you have 15 minutes, just go across the street and like wander around and look at all the stuff. We'll also have space for about 5 or 6 small kiosks, like table-sized kiosks, that we're going to put out there to local artists and makers. So we want local products and artists, and they'll be shorter term leases with less overhead. So it's a great way for people like that to get some exposure and just like low barrier to entrance of retail. So, and right now we're getting ready to enter a recession. So I'm just continuing my let's just, in the face of all odds, let's do something really risky.
I love it. I am totally a fan.
Bring it on.
That's right. Let's do it. Well, you've never done that before? Yeah, let's do it.
Whatever, let's do it.
Yeah, I'm like that too. Have there been comedy shows inside a cave? No, but let's do it. I
Love
totally get it. So when do you have planned, or when is this opening? Is there any
Oh, that's a good question.
Okay.
That's a money question right now. Things are going really slowly. There's some labor shortages and some they were sandblasting the post and beam, cleaning up the wood and the walls and stuff, and ran out of the material they used for that, and it was back like it's just everything's just slow right now. So hopefully in the spring, I think by spring we should be good. So it'll be a nice time to open and yeah, it's going to be good. I think it's going to be a nice addition to the corner.
I think so too. Yeah, that's a cool building over there. I was looking at that too. It's really great. I love it. Yeah, it'll be perfect. It'll be perfect. The world tries to hold you back, but it's not possible. That's what I say. Just not possible. You are a woman with many, many talents. And I love that you've brought them all together and what you do today. I learned that you have a degree in liberal arts with a minor in English and art from EMU, Eastern Mennonite University. And then you worked there for 13 years as a graphic designer and marketing director. I'm wondering, what ways do you feel this background has contributed to your continued success today as a community builder, connector, and entrepreneur?
So I think a lot of what I'm doing now is kind of self-taught and just a part of my personality. I'm finding things out about myself that I didn't know I had in me. Like I just never saw myself as a business person. I always sort of pigeonholed myself as a creative thinker, but didn't really translate that into entrepreneur kind of thing. But the things that we've done here and the way that we approach stuff, I think that's, during the pandemic, and I was watching a lot of restaurants suffer. I think so much of it was because they were thinking about it like, well, we can't do things the way we used to do them, so we can't do them. and only knowing it by the restaurant playbook, kind of like, this is what you're supposed to do. And now that they say we can't do it, what am I supposed to do? And they're a little bit lost. And my brain thinks very much like an entrepreneur and creatively about everything. And so being able to say, okay, well, here's an obstacle, like, what do we have to do to overcome it? Or what do we have to do differently? Or how do we keep people engaged? Or how do we, I hate the word pivot, but how do we pivot? Like what do we need to do that's different? And some of that was just self-taught. Honestly, I think I gained a lot of like negotiating skills and empowerment in my divorce. I wouldn't recommend anybody do that.
Yeah, I feel it. That's been there, done that.
It's not the best way to learn that skill, but here we are. Yeah. So I think I just have learned a lot of that as I'm growing up, and I'm 51 years old, and everyone's like, why are you doing this now when you're 51? I'm like, because now I have time. Like I've got time. My kids are grown up. I can focus on the things I want to focus on. And I know as moms, especially, it's really hard to carve out that time where you're not running kids around or helping them with homework or taking them to soccer and all that stuff. And that our sort of dreams and goals get pushed to the side sometimes. Which is one of the things I love about my mother, back to my mother, acting at 81 years old or whatever. I love that.
So good. And she's great too.
Yes, yeah. So I think it's just, some of it's, like I said, self-taught and just, growing up and figuring out who you are. But I do think the skills and the things that I've learned growing up and in school, both visually has been really important to me. I often think that when you make something look really beautiful on a plate, it tastes exponentially better than if you just throw it on a plate. And again, Rachel has that sense about her too, that these platings are just really gorgeous, and we put food down in front of people and they ooh and ah, and it just, it just enhances the experience so much. So yeah, I think all of that training, the writing, especially, I had a high school English teacher who was fantastic, and she was hard and everybody hated her except for me because I loved the way she pushed people. She made me a better writer. All those skills have definitely come in more handy, and but I think a lot of who I am today is just through through life.
Through life.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. It's a sink or swim moment. Some of those moments.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I can relate to that.
Pressure makes diamonds, right?
Yeah, there you go. That's why it's happening. I agree with that. You have a all women's team, you said, right? So you have Rachel, yourself. Who are the other members of this all woman team?
Yeah. So Rachel Fitzgerald is my chef. Yeah. We started out with Rachel, her as the lead baker, but she has gone on to other things. And Shelby Longenecker is running the bakery now as the manager. And then Katie Schmidt, who has been in service in this town for a long time. And a lot of people recognize her and know her and love her, is our front of house manager. So I have an amazing team and they are doing incredible work. And I'm so proud of them. And I'm fortunate to have them on my side. And I just sometimes feel like I'm not needed. And I sit up at my desk and do like admin things and feel sad for myself. But it's good.
Yeah, it's good. Well, you're tackling the next thing with this Liberty Mercantile. So I have a feeling you are not going to be bored very much longer.
No.
No. Well, as we wrap up here, can you share with the laughers how they can follow Magpie Diner on social media or otherwise to get more information?
Yeah. So we have a really strong presence on Instagram. People come in and show us our Instagram from like 2 months ago and say, I'd like to order this. Show us a picture.
And that's a no.
Yeah, right. Sometimes it's a no. Yeah. So follow us on that. It's Magpie Diner is the handle. And then also the Facebook is the same, Magpie Diner. The Perch is the perchworkspace.com or the Perch Workspace on Instagram as well. And we do host some public events that are really interesting to everybody. So feel free to reach out and join us for any of those.
Okay. Can you give us an example of one or two of those public events just to give people an idea of why they might want to come?
Yeah. So we have a gallery on the first floor. So we do the first Friday gallery openings every month with different artists. And then we also have on the last Thursday of each month, we have something called Caffeinate Innovate. And it's basically a casual morning conversation. It starts at 8:00 and we drink coffee and chat and socialize for about 15 minutes. And then we have a guest speaker who we consider an innovator in their field or in life. And we have them talk about what they're doing. And it's always a really interesting moderated conversation. And then we open it up for Q&A and then it just gets really fantastic. They're just so good. So if you have any interest in just hearing people's stories or the interesting things that are happening in town that you might not know about, it's a great time to come and meet other people. Yeah.
It sounds like my kind of party.
Yeah.
Right there. It is great. Well, laughers, we'll be sure to put that information for you in the show notes as well so that you can get involved and visit Magpie and maybe check out the Perch and all the wonderful things. Thank you so much, Kirsten. It's been so delightful hanging out with you today, talking about all things good food and good neighbors at Magpie. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart for being on here today.
Thank you for having me, Dawn. This is fun.
Totally fun. And laughers, you can get more information by visiting their website at magpiediner.com. That's Magpie, Magpie, diner.com, or visit their diner at 85 West Gay Street in Harrisonburg. We'll also be sure to put this information for you in the show notes as well, so you can check out all their scrumptious modern diner-inspired menus, cocktails, mocktails, weekend brunches, bakery items, and more. Be sure to check out their membership day passes and all that's available to you also at the Perch. And lastly, and most importantly, thanks for tuning in, laughers. Out of all the podcasts out there, you picked us, and we think that's pretty darn special, just like you. Until next time, keep smiling. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Virginia is for Laughers podcast, brought to you by X2 Comedy. We'll be dropping a new podcast every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so check back for another uplifting episode. Come to an X2 Comedy show or let us bring a show to you. To find out more, head to x2comedy.com. Be sure to share us with a friend. Until next time, cheers.